Okay, good evening. It is 6 o'clock. Welcome to our board meeting. I'm going to call it to order and welcome our friends from Oak Park Carpenter to come in and join us, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, we got a big crowd tonight. This is great. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Would you all stay and come around to the podium over there and tell us your name and either your favorite subject in school or maybe your favorite hot lunch. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, my name is Nikki Ferris, and my name is Nikki Ferris, and I teach 5th grade at Oak Park Carpenter. Hi, I'm Allie Baker. I teach 3rd grade at OPC, and together we sponsor Student Council.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Stutterheim, and my favorite subject at school is math.
Great.
My name is Lainey Crispino, and my favorite subject in school is science.
My name is Theo Dachi, and my favorite subject is math.
Her name is Grace, and she likes chicken and rice.
Welcome, Grace.
I'm Nikki Bennett. I'm the proud principal of OPC.
I'm Archer Bennett, and my favorite school subject is history.
I'm Penelope Amos, and my favorite subject is math.
I'm Jenny Steinmeier, and my favorite subject is science.
I'm Autumn Stutterheim, and my favorite subject is math.
My name is Emma, and I like math.
My name's Elise, and I like math.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. That's the best, as always. Yeah. Have a good night. All right, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda if there are no changes?
So moved, Hembry.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Boardman.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We have minutes from 4 different meetings. If there are no changes, could I also get a motion for approval?
I'll move approval. Westbrook.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Boardman.
Great. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries to approve items 1.4 to 1.7. All right, that brings us to our superintendent's report, item 2.1. Dr. Schumacher.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. As we're bringing up the slides, just to let you know, we do have a pretty full superintendent report. It's been about a month since we've met, so some great stuff going on. First thing is that this year, 3 Shawnee Mission Biotechnology Signature Program students qualified to attend the National Junior Science and Humanities Symposium. They're now preparing to attend the National Symposium in Washington, D.C. This April. Qualifying students include Elizabeth Barnes, Shawnee Mission West Junior, who earned 2nd place and a $1,500 scholarship. Cooper Grotzinger, Shawnee Mission South Senior, who earned a 3rd place and a $1,000 scholarship. And Suhira Bakhtu, Shawnee Mission Northwest Senior, who earned 4th place. Their sponsors are Dr. Kenneth Lee and Zolma Perez Estrella. They are the biotechnology instructors, so great job to them. The Kansas School Social Worker of the Year Award was presented to Ann Langdon, who serves Arrowhead and the Shawnee Mission School District. This award, presented by the Kansas School Social Worker Association, is given in recognition of Langdon's dedication, compassion, and unwavering commitment to supporting students, families, and the school social work community. A month from now, the Research and Development Forum will be in full swing in Shawnee Mission. There is still time to enter projects in the Student Showcase. Every student in the SMSD is invited to share experiments, inventions, and project displays at the R&D Forum. The deadline to submit is March 28th. We'll include a link in the recap. The Student Showcase is a district-wide open house, and we are excited to welcome everyone from 4 to 7 p.m. on April 22nd, 23rd, and 24th here at the CAA. We also look forward to hosting the next Great Idea competition at 9 a.m. on April 26th here at the CAA, and it will be live streamed for those who can't come in person. We, of course, thank the Rainier family for their ongoing support and longstanding support for the Shawnee Mission R&D Forum. It's a great event. This March, our Read Across SMSD theme is Join In. Let's take a look.
I'm Kim Hinkle, and one of the things I love most about music is that it creates experiences everyone can enjoy. In other words, music gives us all a way to join in. Our elementary book this March is called Jam 2 by Janae Brown Wood. This book tells the story of a group of people who start jamming on the beach, adding instruments as they go. There's one child we all get to know who does not have an instrument, but finds a way to be a part of the fun. This book reminds us how sometimes we all bring something different to the group, but we can all play a part in making an experience new and different and better. I'm so happy to be with Callista Martin and students at Sunflower Elementary School who are going to play a little music for us today. Anyone watching, even if you don't have an instrument, we invite you to join us. If you want to nod your head or stomp your feet or dance or clap along, go for it. Thank you so much, everyone, for making this song awesome. I am so excited because we get to share today that your school is going to be getting some new instruments to help even more students get the chance to join in. Ms. Martin applied for a Shawnee Mission Education Foundation Excellence in Education grant, and your school is going to be getting $1,200 to support music education. So, Ms. Martin, you applied to get some new musical instruments that are really great for some students with special needs. There's adaptive triangles and recorders and other things that make sure that everyone can join in.
We're really excited about having some instruments that are sturdy and easy to grab. Thank you so much. We're so glad that everyone at Sunflower Elementary will be able to jam too.
I don't know about you, but I feel even more ready to face the day. So keep playing music and dancing to the beat. Let's read across SMSD!
That was good. Yeah, very good. Saw a little bit of clapping and head nodding up here, so nice job, guys. Thank you very much, of course, to Callista Martin and the Sunflower Elementary School musicians, and our ongoing thank you to NEA Shawnee Mission for their partnership. Special thanks to Kim Hinkle for hosting, and the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation for providing access to Read Across SMSD books to all of our schools, and for the many ways they continue to support our students. Special place in my heart here. We invite everyone to take a listen to our district podcast. It is a great way to find out about amazing students and staff in our schools. I do want to highlight a couple of our recent episodes this evening. Our most recent episode highlights the Shawnee Mission service animals and some of the amazing ways that they support student mental health in our schools. It was a really fun one. Bing Bong was our guest, so if you haven't watched that one, that was really fun. This month, we also highlighted our district Women in Leadership program, which I know many of you helped support as well. We invite everyone to listen and subscribe and watch for new episodes to be released every other Thursday. So we had great success for the winter season. So I want to step you through this. It was a thrilling winter for our athletes in Shawnee Mission. We wanted to highlight a few state recognitions, so bear with me, there's a lot here. In boys wrestling, Adam Hagman, a senior at Shawnee Mission Northwest, was state champion in the 175-pound category. In girls wrestling, Lulu Kirk, a freshman from Shawnee Mission South, was also state champion in her bracket. Shawnee Mission South also had several top finishes, including Stella Segura taking third, Adeline Masters taking third, Rachel Wilson taking third, Seven Donovan taking third, and Shofa Flanner taking second in their respective categories. Shawnee Mission East was state runner-up in bowling, and Christian Leahy from Shawnee Mission East earned second place in individual titles. In boys swimming, Shawnee Mission East High School was state runner-up as a team. Gabe Cavan, representing Shawnee Mission Northwest, was named state champion, and Max Cavan, representing Shawnee Mission Northwest, earned third place in the 50-yard freestyle. Jack Eaton from Shawnee Mission North was third place in the 100-yard butterfly. Gabe Cavan earned second place in the 100-yard freestyle. Emmett Lynch from Shawnee Mission East earned third place in the 500-yard freestyle. Jonathan Guild from Shawnee Mission North earned third place in the 100-yard backstroke. And a team from Shawnee Mission East earned first place in the 200-yard freestyle relay. So great success in the pool. We also want to congratulate the Shawnee Mission Northwest boys basketball team on their back-to-back state championships. Huge accomplishment. In middle school championships, Indian Hills earned the top title in girls and boys basketball. This, of course, is a rundown of some of the highlights. We congratulate all athletes and coaches on all personal and team accomplishments this past season. Shawnee Mission is proud of the 1,917 students who took part in winter sports, and we're looking forward to an exciting spring. A snow day may have briefly postponed one of our all-star recognitions, but we are glad to move forward this evening. We have 3 of them to recognize tonight, and I first want to invite up Mr. Jason Pearies, Shawnee Mission East High School principal, to introduce our first nominee.
It's my pleasure to introduce Melinda DiGirolamo as a Shawnee Mission School District All-Star. As an English language arts teacher at Shawnee Mission East High School, Ms. DiGirolamo teaches hundreds of students annually. Every student, staff member, and family know Melinda to be a highly effective educator who embodies what it means to take care of kids. What is remarkable about Ms. DiGirolamo is her relentless positivity and care for others. She has a unique way about her that makes others feel special and valued. She exudes kindness and compassion. Her support for students and colleagues is both sincere and meaningful. In our school, Ms. DiGirolamo serves our students in and out of the classroom. She has taken on difficult tasks and done so with enthusiasm. She is loved and appreciated because that is what she gives. Ms. DiGirolamo loves and demonstrates sincere appreciation for every person she encounters. The way she serves students, colleagues, and families is remarkable and worthy of recognition. Thank you, Ms. DiGirolamo, and congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. And now the Shawnee Mission School District Communications team has prepared a video to further recognize and celebrate Ms. DiGirolamo. Melinda's just one of those rare individuals that has unbelievable kindness and sincerity and compassion for others. And she just has a way about her that makes everyone around her better. Her ability to work with any team and then to work with students also and get the absolute most out of them is just special.
her students tend to gravitate towards her. They come and see her before after school just to talk with her, because that's the kind of environment that she creates for her students, is a place where they can be comfortable.
She's very open, she's very attentive. Overall, I just really enjoy being in her class.
She has a great vocabulary. She has one of the best vocabularies of anyone I know. In fact, sometimes I catch myself looking up words that she uses because I'll think, I'm not familiar with that word.
She and her students enjoy a really warm relationship. I see them sharing pictures with her of what they did over the weekend. I know that they trust her, they come to her for guidance.
So there was an instance where I was in her class and I was really nervous about a speech coming up, even if I didn't really openly express it. Honestly, it was her feedback that really spoke to me after the fact. You know, I was so nervous that I didn't do a good job or that maybe I stammered too much. But no, she told me I did a great job, and it made me feel so good. And she even sent like a voicemail home to my mom, and so that made me so happy and it made me feel really proud.
Melinda is just so bright and positive. She somehow makes every room or environment she's in feel like sunshine. She makes East a great place to be at, whether you're a student or a teacher or an administrator. She truly deserves everything that comes with being recognized as an all-star.
The students know that they can lean on Melinda when they're not having the best day or when they're having the best day. She's a great relationship builder in our community, and our kids know that.
I think students nominated her as an all-star, and I think that speaks volumes of students going out of their way to make sure that somebody that they care about, somebody that they respect, gets some well-deserved recognition.
When you see her walking down the hall, she just has this like positive air about her. Like you just want to smile when you see her.
Wow, I'm so blown away. I have no words, but I do have some words. So I'm standing here tonight with so much gratitude. Being nominated for this award isn't just a personal honor. It reflects the amazing community we built together. As a proud public school teacher, I'm reminded that 90% of the kids in this state attend public schools, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of that. First, I want to thank the administration. It's truly humbling to be acknowledged like this, especially my principal, Jason Pearies. He supports each and every teacher in our building, not only professionally, but personally too. He's always willing to lend a hand and an ear. To my fellow colleagues, it's special that inspires me every day. Together, we've made a difference in our students' lives, and I cherish every moment we've shared. I also want to acknowledge all of the teachers in our district and across the state and our entire nation. Your dedication, passion, and resilience are what make our schools truly shine. Let's keep supporting and uplifting one another as we strive to create a nurturing and inspiring environment. Together, we can create a brighter future and empower the next generation. Thank you once again for this incredible honor. I'm truly humbled and so proud to be a part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melinda, for everything that you're doing for our kids. Thank you. Nice job. Thank you. And next, I'd like to call up Mr. Matt Engler, principal at Trail Ridge Middle School.
To the Board of Education and Dr. Schumacher, thank you for having me here tonight. It is my absolute pleasure to stand before you today to honor a truly remarkable educator. Holly Barnhart is a teacher who goes above and beyond every single day. She is someone who not only teaches the curriculum, but also genuinely cares about the students she serves. She is passionate, dedicated, and tireless in her commitment to her students' success. She builds strong relationships with each one, making sure they feel valued and supported. Her creative and engaging teaching methods bring social studies to life, sparking curiosity and a love for learning in all of her students. Beyond the classroom, she's a leader within the building to her peers and as a mentor to her student teacher. She took the initiative to develop and organize our Building Career Fair, providing students with a valuable opportunity to learn about potential careers. In addition to her incredible professional accomplishments, Holly is kind and compassionate. She has a unique ability to make everyone around her feel seen and heard, creating an environment where both students and colleagues thrive. We are incredibly lucky to have her as a part of our school community, and today we celebrate her not just as an all-star educator, but as the kind, caring person who makes our school a better place for all. With that, I think we have another video.
She's very unique because no matter what happens, she's going to go through any obstacle she can to make sure that her students are learning, to make sure that her students are engaged, and to make sure her students enjoy what they learn. Social studies is so ingrained into her that she makes it fun.
She obviously has a joy for teaching. When you walk in, she makes every kid feels like they belong. She always checks in on them. How is their day going? What do they need to be successful? Her just commitment to having student success in her classroom as well as outside of the classroom is truly inspirational.
She is kind. She is generous with her time. She loves and cares deeply for all of our students. She is innovative. She's constantly thinking about new ways to teach her curriculum.
If you walk into her class, the first thing that you're going to notice is that her students truly feel a part of the learning environment. They know that she cares about them, but most importantly, she brings some really interesting and engaging ways to be able to put the curriculum into a perspective that they can grasp onto and have fun while they're learning.
She's very, very nice, and I feel like she always puts her students first, and she just isn't like a normal teacher. She is more involved than any other teacher I've had, and really makes every school day really fun.
She helps make it more realistic, and you can really imagine what really goes on, and it's very fun.
I love how she teaches social studies. I like the Revolutionary War. She's actually teaching the Civil War right now, and I just think the way she explains it is really awesome.
I can think of no one else who deserves it more than you. You are awesome. We are so lucky to have you at Trail Ridge.
Your friendship and being a teacher with you means the world to me. Congratulations.
We are so proud of you, and we are so grateful that you're part of Trail Ridge and a part of Shawnee Mission.
I love you, Ms. Barnhart. You're the best. I'm glad you won this award.
Ms. Barnhart, I'm so proud of you. I do appreciate you as a teacher, and I am so thankful that you have won this award.
Miss Barnhart, you are like my favorite teacher, and I'm so happy you won this award.
Congratulations, Ms. Barnhart. You deserve it. All the effort, all the amazing interactions and lessons that you plan. I'm so glad you won this. Congrats.
Thank you, everybody. That was very moving. This is incredibly gratifying, but also very humbling. I teach 8th grade American history, but what I love most actually is teaching middle schoolers. Teaching 8th graders is an adventure every single day. And the fact that this award comes from them means everything to me. Growing up, I was lucky to have teachers who made a huge difference, teachers who quite literally changed my life. They are my inspiration, as are all of my current Trail Ridge colleagues. My biggest goal has always been to pay that forward, to show up for my students the way that my teachers showed up for me. And I just kind of want to leave you guys with the quote that actually my building principal, where did he go? That he actually leaves the staff with when he does our morning announcements. And it's kind of, his mantra, but also mine that I live by every day with our kids. And that is, it's a great day to be the difference. And I hope in some small way that I am doing that for the kids. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Amazing. All right, one final one. I now invite John Deemer, elementary principal, Mr. Britt Pumphrey.
Hello again. I love to get to follow up after these other two awesome candidates are all-stars as well. And so board, thank you for doing this. Thank you for having us. I get the honor to introduce Miss Guillen, but if you come to our community, she is known as Miss G. And if you've been there, I know you felt her influence. So it's really easy to introduce her. When I first came to Deemer 3 years ago, I met with her. We talked through logistics, kind of the lay of the land, and then she looked at me and she said, you know, Britt, how are we going to make Deemer a place where every kid wants to be every day? And she really lives by that mantra. I think everybody here feels that. If you come in the morning, it's dancing, it's high fives, it's hugs. There's several students at my school who don't know. They think maybe I'm the second principal, are not sure. But really, when I thought about what does it mean to be an all-star for kids, this is what it takes for our schools to be amazing, is that everybody, regardless of title, role, position, just brings it for kids and brings the positivity, brings the awareness that we don't know what students are bringing in that day or what they need or what they don't, and they just show up for kids, and that's what Lindsay does. I think one great final example is this year. There's students at Indian Woods Middle School, where our students go to middle school, and a student who just needed some extra motivation. And as they were trying to figure out, okay, how do we motivate you? You get this done, what can we do for you? And of course, what they selected was, well, if I do this, can Miss G come over and eat lunch with me? Which I think is just a testament to how she is, and a testament to her impact on the community. If you could just wave real quick if you're from the Deemer community in support of Miss G tonight, I think is a testament to her as well. Her impact is wide, so I hope this video captures how people feel about her.
The first time I met her a few years ago, she just said, hey, what are you and me gonna do to make the culture of this building an amazing place for kids? And that question, when you get that question as a principal, you just think like, yeah, you know, let's go, let's do this.
She is the life and energy of our building. Like, simply put, she is the first face that a lot of students see when they get to Deemer. So she meets them outside, greets them, just with that energy and passion to show the kids like, hey, we're excited you're here. And they feel it when they come in.
She is just a friend to everybody. She celebrates everybody's differences. She celebrates everybody's strengths, everybody's weaknesses. She really pushes the kids to be their best selves, starting right at the beginning of the day when the kids are coming in the morning.
Like, for an impact on our school, she makes our school better. Like, she makes everybody happy.
Whenever we walk into school, she always makes everyone feel in a good mood. If someone's walking in sad, Miss G will like hype them up, and then we'll just make everyone's day feel special.
Her smile, and she's so fun. Definitely brights up my day when I'm feeling down, and like, she's an amazing role model.
Everybody have a totally tubular Tuesday!
It's just that creation of culture that is such a rich part of John Deemer, and I know that starts with Lindsay.
Deemer is a much better place with you here, and we couldn't imagine you not being here with us every day.
Thank you for always being respectful and always having a big smile with your big personality.
Miss G, thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you do, for the life that you bring, the energy that you bring to Deemer. We appreciate you and are so blessed to have you.
Miss G, thank you so much for everything that you do here at Deemer. We love you so much, and I don't know how we would keep this place going without you supporting us and supporting all of our students and staff. Thank you.
No, you're so much taller. Thank you. I appreciate that Britt didn't have a paper because I don't have a paper either. I knew I had to say some words, but I just really appreciate this so much. I love my job. My community and my team makes it easy to love my job. It's easy to do what I do. I love coming to work every single day. I have my 2 kids here, but I tell them I have 405 other children, so they know. I see kids out in the community, they're like, Mommy, are you gonna hug everybody? Are you gonna talk to everybody? I'm like, yeah, I am. That's what Ms. G does, so I just appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Ms. G. Congratulations. And as I conclude, just one final comment. As we all know, last week the President signed an executive order directing the Secretary of Education to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. Last week, the Kansas State Board of Education and the Kansas State Department of Education released a statement in response to the President's actions. The SMSD will take guidance from our state leaders. Education largely is a state issue. However, we've always appreciated the federal role in the American education system. As KSD said last week, this is in quotes, "For decades, federal support has played a critical role in ensuring equitable access to education, particularly for students with disabilities and those from low-income families in rural communities. These are unprecedented times for public educators and for those families and communities who rely on public education and the promise that it provides to all students across this country. And as I said when I was hired to be superintendent about a year ago, I believe strongly that public schools are the great equalizer in this country, and I committed at that time to fight for our students and our families and our community. As public school leaders, there's never been a more important time in our careers to fight for what we know is right and to do what we can for those who don't have a voice and depend so greatly on the services that we provide. Having said that, our leadership team will work closely with our state leaders, our local Board of Education, to ensure the students of the SMSD receive the resources they deserve. This will include strongly voicing our concerns when necessary and appropriate. We are all in for our students and for the Shawnee Mission community. And with that concludes my superintendent report.
Thank you for that. We now are on board reports, and I'm going to start with Mr. Garcia to give us an update on the Shawnee Mission Area Council PTA and then the Education Foundation, if there's anything you want to share there.
Not too much to report out. Hard to follow up all these wonderful all-stars. SMAC PTSA, as many folks have been connected to their emails, have been sending out a lot of information to families, teachers, community members, just about some of the actions in Topeka and how to voice your opinion. So I'm really grateful for their leadership in that regard. So yeah, and no report from the Education Foundation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Borgman, anything from KASB Board of Directors?
Yeah, so at our last meeting a few weeks ago, it was a lot around what was happening in the legislature, and so I will leave that to Ms. Ousley and Dr. Little here in a minute. And also, the other big news out of that meeting is that we decided as vice presidents to depart NSBA. The membership is $80,000 a year, and KSBA decided that it would be better if we spent that money elsewhere. And so it was a difficult decision, but an easy one at the same time. And, excuse me, once the KASBA reached out to NSBA, so many letters, the feedback was that we reached out to the NSBA after the board meeting. The executive director was disappointed and frustrated because they have not been able to get the NSBA ship righted quicker. And in the time since the board's decision and us notifying about our membership, we've had very few inquiries, and most of the inquiries were along the lines of questioning and versus displeasure with the decision that had been made. So we are going to the NSBA National Convention here, coming up here in a couple weeks. And beyond that, we'll have to take a look at whether we want to go to that convention as a board or if we want to look into another meeting. So, any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
All right. Big decisions, though. Yep. Because we do support our national associations, but I appreciate that. Ms. Owsley, any update on the Policy Review Committee?
So we did have a meeting today, and we received an update from the administration on a potential draft policy. We had an opportunity to discuss it, and I believe that it will be coming for a first read at our dais at our next board meeting on April 14th, which is also tax day. So I'll remember that. But Dr. Schumacher will make all of the information that was available to us available to the board as a whole, and then we can have our conversation during the first read, and then should the board decide to move forward with any changes, they can implement the changes and bring it back to us at the end of April. So there was a lot of meat to the presentation today from the district leadership team with the creation of a rubric to analyze requests. And so I hope everyone has an opportunity to review that before we meet in April so that they can kind of get a feel for the amount of, I think, deliberative thought process that went into the development of the standards via which the district could perhaps thread a needle in assessing both equity concerns and meeting an opportunity for participation from our community when it is warranted or when a program is for the benefit of all of our students in the community and the district as a whole.
Okay. So just to reiterate process, there would be a first read April 14th. Community board members can have input like our other policies.
Yes.
Before a second read and any action.
Yes.
And I anticipate a subsequent meeting.
I would anticipate that there would be a robust presentation from our administrative leadership team to go over the various aspects that they've presented to us today, with an opportunity for everyone from the dais to ask questions and get additional information. So, but again, that would be if everybody can take an opportunity to kind of pour through it prior to the meeting, so that if there are substantive questions, to give everyone opportunities to get back with answers. Since this is new in a lot of ways, it might take them time to craft, whatever might pop up in reviewing it. So I just want to give them an opportunity to really be prepared for the meeting so that we can dig in and have a productive conversation so that we have answers for the board and for the community.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other board reports? Okay. We will move on to item 2.3, the board financial report.
Yeah, Mr. Knapp is not here, but a pretty standard board financial report. I can try to answer any questions you may have, but pretty standard.
All right. Any questions? Don't see any. Okay. Let's move on to our first discussion item, 3.1, our legislative update.
Yeah, I'd like to call Dr. Stuart Little to the podium to discuss our legislative update.
Welcome.
Good evening. Stuart Little, Government Relations. I want to thank you all for your support, and I want to thank Dr. Schumacher and David for working over spring break on a wide variety of issues. As most of you who've been here for a while realize, all the interesting things happen during spring break, it seems like. So it's just where we fall on the schedule of the legislative process. We'll give you a brief update of kind of where we are, what we think is happening in the next 5 days. I guess we're down to 4 days at this point, but Friday is the end of the regular session. They will be done by the end of that day. They will come back April 10th, probably 10, 11, 12, to do any final issues. A lot of that will have to do with the governor vetoing anything that gets sent to her this week. That'll allow them to come back. If she does any vetoes before they come back, that would give them the opportunity to attempt to override those vetoes or anything related to the budget if they ever finish the budget. So we are right now, as of a little bit on Friday, but it just started today, in the conference committee process, which means the tax committees are meeting to talk about tax. the budget, the appropriations people are meeting to talk about spending, and they're coming back at 7:30. So if you want to watch, you can do that after the board meeting. Then education folks are going to have their first meeting tomorrow. So we have not done any education work yet. We'll get to that tomorrow. And there's a surprisingly limited amount of things for them to deal with. And I'll get over that. The big thing that in the biggest picture of things that does have an impact on revenue for school districts is there are 3 or 4 different plans that have been implemented and passed by one chamber or the other to limit assessed valuation property tax growth, either through constitutional amendments that cap it at a flat rate or cap it at a rolling average. And then there are another bill that's now got 2 variations of it that would attempt to tie the ability for local units of government to limit property tax increases and have to have like a protest petition on exceeding kind of that revenue neutral rate. The bill that exists right now, 2396, does not apply to schools. It does to cities and counties, and don't hold your breath that it may move into something a little bit different before we get done. The reality of this too is that neither one of these 4 options that are on the table probably can pass both chambers. So that's what they're working on to try to get done before the end of this week. Because obviously those of you that will recall last year, they passed a lot of income tax reductions, and the desire was to come back and do property taxes this year. And we are 4 days from the end, and we're no closer to that. I will mention briefly the budget and where we are. That's been the focus of a lot of attention. The House and Senate began negotiating the budget this morning. They broke up about 6 tonight, and they're going to be back in the morning to get at it again. A couple of things that we're watching in the budget bill, as you're well aware. The governor had recommended $72 million for special education, new funding. We have gone through in the House a committee process that went from adding 72 million down to adding 10. So there's 10 million new funding on the House side. The Senate committee did not add any funding for special education. The Senate committee also did not fund, both in the current year and in the next year, about 6 programs that total somewhere about $11 million. Safe and secure schools, I don't think we get any of that money from the state, but professional development, teacher mentoring programs, CTE, transportation costs, all those kind of things are in this bundle that the Senate said, we're going to take back all the money for the current year, and we're not going to fund it next year, which if that passes, you'll have to write the state a check for the money that you got for those things to pay them back, or you'll get reduced in the next year if we get back to it. But that is unresolved at this point. They've gone back and forth as they've been negotiating throughout the day, and that issue is still unresolved. I would note, as I'd put in our written report, that in kind of tailing Dr. Shoemaker's comments about federal issues, I think in Topeka, there has been, other than the Education Commissioner's conversation with the board last week, that has not been discussed in the legislature. I do not, to the best of my recollection, ever having a conversation in committee, hearing, briefing, update. So we're going to be done and gone before I think some of these things may play out at the federal level. Obviously, the distinctions between what can be done through the changes at the Department of Education and what requires congressional action is better handled by people than me. But at the state level, as far as the legislative process is concerned, there's no real preparation for what may happen, at least that's been taking place publicly. So I just want to make sure you all are aware of that. Where we are in the Education Conference Committee, I'll highlight a couple of notable items, and then I take some things off the table, and there's actually not a whole lot for them to be negotiating on. I'll start at kind of at the top. Senate Bill 75 was the big refundable tax credit, $8,000 per kid to take your child to a non-public school or homeschool. That bill is not advancing. It is on hold, and it's not going to move forward this year. There's some question of whether it will next year as well, but I guess that's the other thing to note. Everything's still alive. Most everything is still alive until next session on the 2-year cycle. So that's kind of off the table. I think the next thing that was raising a great deal of concern was expanding the non-public school scholarship program. There was an attempt to increase the tax credit to add new folks to that bill, expanding the cap from $10 million up to $25 million. That bill was scheduled to run on the House floor twice last week, never made it up for debate. And then it's how things go at this time of the year. That was going to be put off until next year on Friday. Actually, the House leadership struck the bill from the calendar, which means it's dead. So they can do another bill next year, but I think symbolically they were trying to get people to say, do you understand we're not going to run this? So they killed it so nobody can bring it up and work it again. So that's off the table. The other bill that was raising a lot of interest was Senate Bill 47, which was the bill that attempted to modify you all's meeting processes in terms of who could control the agenda, who could speak, what that procedure would look like, other issues related to publication of contact information and those kind of things. That bill is not going to run this year either. It passed the Senate. It's on the House floor, but it barely passed the Senate by one vote. And I think folks know that that's probably not a path they want to spend any more time and energy going down. So what's left in Education Conference Committee? There's a small bill, Senate Bill 45, that has to do with calculating graduation rates, and I think public schools and virtual schools, both it provides, as I understand it, a bit of a modification that a student transferring to another, even a non-public school, can roll off your accountability for graduation rates because then they're dealt with someplace else. There is the bill that was not of much controversy that non-public school students who are participating in CASHA activities would also be allowed to participate in school activities related to that sport. And that's, as many bills do that we deal with, was one example where a non-public school participated in an athletic event was not allowed to participate in the award ceremony at a school function. That probably could have been easily resolved, but now it's in statute. So there are a couple of other things I would note. I'm just kind of say this. A couple of the issues are kind of outside of our ed universe, but just to point them out. The bill that was introduced late in the session, it was Senate Bill 288. It's the bill that prohibits certain sexual offenders from entering school property or participating in school events. That bill very quickly moved out of the Senate, and it is going to be in conference committee. It's going to likely be in a judiciary Education Conference Committee. I don't know exactly where that's going to land yet. We haven't started on that, but that bill is going to move forward this year. I don't think it'll be discussed in education. I think it'll be in judiciary, but that's out there as well. There's and kind of in that health universe, and I shared a lot of this at the beginning of the session with the administration, the School Psychologist Compact, which is bringing together a variety of licensed professions in the psychology universe into a compact, and that's been circulated to everybody, and since early in the session, that's moving forward. That'll get probably negotiated out in Education Committee. The last thing I would note that'll probably be in Conference Committee is it is the essence of Senate Bill 275, which came up very late at the end of the session and got a hearing. It requires fetal development video presentation in health education curriculum. That bill got a brief hearing. It was stuck into a House bill, so it'll be discussed in conference committee, and that'll be most likely in the Education Conference Committee as well. So there's going to be, surprisingly, after everything that we've shared, there's a narrow range of bills in the Education Committee, and some of those ones that 47, 87, 75 are all off the table now at this point. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that. For everything that's happened this session, it's like a shorter list than you would think about when you were following along, you know? Big issues still on the table in terms of budget, but anyways, Ms. Owsley.
So I just have a couple of follow-up questions. The first is, if it passes one chamber, so like if Senate Bill 47, it passed the Senate, it only passed with one vote, is it conferenceable for the conference committee currently and they're just not debating it? Or is it not conferenceable because it only passed the Senate?
No, anything can go into, anything that passes one chamber or the other can be a conferenceable, meaning the conference committee could meet. Sometimes we get a little squishy with those rules too, but in general, that's the basic rule, has to pass one or the other to be addressed.
So have they just stated that they're not working it because it only passed by one vote, or is it just the assumption is that they're not working it and they're not conferencing it? That's okay if you don't know the answer.
It theoretically could show up in the conference committee. We had a lot of extended conversations with members of the legislature and folks in leadership, and the decision, as we understand, the decision was made not to bring it up for debate because they didn't think they had the votes to pass it.
And I'm not going to argue with that at all.
Right.
But then my follow-up question is another issue with regards to whether or not there was the votes to pass it, and that was with the voucher bill and the corporate tax credit scholarship bill. The fact that those did not come above the line for a vote, and then they, killed it for this year. There was discussion about the fact that the vast majority of the accredited schools, or accredited private schools that would qualify for those dollars, were predominantly located in Johnson County, Wichita, and Topeka, and that those, whether there were others outside of those primary metropolitan areas, was a point of contention. And so I mostly am asking this question, one, to raise it so that people understand that, as one of our public commenters mentioned earlier, 90% of the children in our state are educated in public schools, and a lot of people outside of the metropolitan areas don't even have access to anything else anyways. But do you have a sense for what the issue was that led leadership to not bring that for a vote? Because clearly we would want to make sure that we had access to whatever that information was for future sessions, because it's not going to go, the issue isn't going to go away.
Oh, no, I would agree. This issue, Senate Bill 47, the larger refundable tax credit, that's part of what we're going to see for the foreseeable future. I think 87, the expansion of the scholarship, the reality is this scholarship program has been in place for 10 years. The governor has signed it, has signed bills expanding it, has done those kinds of things. So it is a feature of the system now. The expansion of it, I think, is the reaction to this bill in some ways is a couple of things. A function of everyone having a greater awareness of how things like this are playing out in other places in terms of who it benefits and how it's utilized and how it's accessed and how it's and how it may work. The same way with the voucher bills. I think in general, I kind of put together the way this is all playing out is this year probably don't want to tackle some things. Because those of you that are watching this from a distance, we're moving very quickly. There are things that are changing all the time. Bills rushed in, as I've come and talked before, things happen very fast. Bills come and go and get hearings, and there's not enough time and those kind of things. I think in general, this fits into the grouping of folks in leadership saying, let's just do some other stuff. We don't need to do these kinds of things. I can't help but believe that there are 63 votes to pass Senate Bill 87 to expand the scholarship. That is a reality, probably. Do you have 84 to overturn a governor's veto? That's where it gets tricky. But
So
I think it's more management of the session than it is, oh, we're not going to try to do this anymore.
There's not an issue that would kill the bill, so to speak. It's just that
Wishful thinking.
Right. Hey, I'm going to have my wishful thinking. So that I have one final point that I want, based off of your presentation tonight, to tie together two of the topics that you've referenced. And this is not a great way to present the information. I'm presenting it too broadly, and so it's not going to have the nitty-gritty details that it would need. But with regards to the bill limiting local property tax collection for municipalities, you noted that that is not applicable to school districts, but of course we have to be aware of moving parts at all times, and things can change later on potentially. And then in the same presentation tonight, we mentioned that the special education funding for the year, which started out with the recommendation from the governor's office of $72 million, and then I think in the House committee was taken down to $32 million, and then in approps it was down to $10 million, which is now at no millions. That conversation about limiting property taxes, it's frequently brought up that for special education funding, what local districts put into special education funding is our skin in the game. And that comes out of our mill levies, our property taxes. And so it strikes me as just something to be aware of, that we have potential losses of dollars for special education coming from the federal level based off of the changes at the U.S. Department of Education. And then we have potential limitations on our ability to raise money locally to meet what is described as our skin in the game with regards to special education. And then we have a state legislature that is not meeting its obligation to fund special education. And so that seems like a very acute issue potentially from all three aspects of funding there. So I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just noting it from your presentation that we are kind of getting hit from all sides potentially with regards to that stream of funding for our kids that we obviously have noted just previously that we are all in for. So that's a hard spot to be placed in by people who are outside of our control. And so thank you for tracking all of those various bills that coalesce around that single issue. And of course, the vouchers for private schools that do not have to educate students with special education needs. So they all end up coming back to one. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Little. I appreciate it.
I'm looking for questions. Could I take us back up to the 30,000-foot level? Can you just, so we have federal issues, maybe some local pressures, and then we have kind of the state funding for the K-12 budget. Can you highlight again for us what pieces are not yet in play that we are looking for the district budget and statewide budget to, provide all those opportunities for every child? So we know that special education funding, that the intent was to add funds over the next several years to get us up to that target statutory amount.
Right.
So special education funding is not there. What else is not in that budget that we're kind of looking for?
At this point, I would say.
Or what's in, maybe.
Yeah, or
too.
maybe to Russ's benefit, he's going to know what he has to deal with earlier than most years since we're ahead of schedule. But, still, special ed we're going to wait on. The base funding's kind of there. This $10, $11 million that's on the table now for professional development, those kind of things. That's on the table. The amount of revenue that the state will have to spend is still in question because of two things. What are you going to do to property tax collections? I didn't even go through the list of bills on income tax reductions that we're talking about. We're talking about, again, a flat tax. We're talking about state revenue, different bills, state revenue exceeding in the CPI that goes into buy down individual income taxes coming together. There's a whole plethora of income tax bills, and I can't tell you what's going to happen between now and Friday, because all those things are up in the air. So so state revenue will be impacted. I do believe that if they can't come to an agreement on something that caps assessed valuation growth or those kind of 3 or 4 programs that I laid out there, the one thing that they can control is the 20 mills. And if they want to pass property tax reduction, they would have the capacity to reduce the statewide 20 mills at some level and be able to, as they did when they tried to do it last year, then do a demand transfer, which takes it theoretically out of the budgeting process. Like, we'll backfill that with income and sales tax to keep that funding amount there. But it is one of the few levers that the legislature has to address property taxes. Now, the legislature will say that they'll backfill that lost property tax revenue, but that's another issue that is potentially out there that could impact the big picture budget. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, thank you. And is that demand transfer there just to define legislative intent? I mean, that's functionally what would happen anyways, right? But do they put that demand, is that demand transfer in there to
Theoretically,
define
every
intent?
dollar has to be appropriated. It goes into the state general fund, it gets out, the legislature spends it.
Okay.
This would say, like some other key components of the budget, highway fund does this a bit, that money that's supposed to go to the highway fund, the legislature doesn't have a say in it. It says off the top, that's a demand transfer. You don't need legislative approval. It's going there. That's the same thing. And they do that until they're 63 and 21 to change it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much. Appreciate all the work you do for us on behalf of our Shawnee Mission students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Little.
Okay. Next discussion item, 3.2 middle school cheer for the 2025-26 school year.
Yeah, switching gears a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, something we think is pretty exciting. So I'm calling to the podium Mr. Kent Glazer, our district athletic director, and Miss Erica Waller, our associate principal at Trail Ridge. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for the board for the opportunity to be here. We are going to drastically change the subject. So, and hopefully to something that, it mentions the word cheer. So hopefully we'll be cheerful about this, and it is something that we're asking for an addition, a proposal. But over a year ago, I stood up here. Erica's been involved with this, all of our middle school ADs. We have expanded our programming at the middle school level. One of the dominoes that occurred with that, as we look at this, we're looking at a proposal to add cheerleading, because if you noticed when we implemented football, there was already youth football that was existing. So grades 1 through 8, our kids had the opportunity to do so. But most of our middle schools in the area at grades 7 and 8, they were moving into the schools. So Shawnee Mission continued to play. Blue Valley still continues to play at 7th grade. But we were the only one that was playing at 8th grade. And so you guys had tremendous support. We were able to implement that program this year. Middle school football was extremely successful. Lots of smiles. Same thing with our middle school soccer. One thing that we did to our local cheerleaders, though, was we yanked the rug out from underneath them. So grades 1 through 7, they have a place that they can go cheer. And then in 8th grade, when they come to play for our schools, all of those kids that were cheering, they didn't have a place to go this year. And it wasn't intentional. It was, what do our other schools do? So Olathe, Blue Valley, all of the DeSoto School District, all of your surrounding middle schools, they all have cheerleading. So that's kind of what we want to put in front of you tonight, is the ability to add cheer also picks our kids back up, gets them involved for the ones that were there, but also expands the opportunity not just for all of those that were seeking cheer opportunities, but now bringing them into the school so that everyone within those walls have the opportunity to cheer if they want to, same way that they do if they want to go out for an athletic event. So that's a little bit of the backstory and the reason this occurred. Erica, I can talk forever. I don't want to do that. But we are extremely proud of what's occurred at the middle school level, extremely thankful for all the support you've given us. But that's a little bit that first slide. What we would like to do is kind of explain what the cheer proposal would look like. And Erica may explain that a little better than I can.
Great, thanks. So we would be entering into a 3-season sport with cheerleading, one for 8th grade football, then girls basketball, and boys basketball. Students that decide to participate in cheer could participate in 1 season or all 3, depending on what other athletic interests they have. So let's say that there's a girl who wants to play girls basketball. She wouldn't be excluded from cheerleading just because she wants to play basketball. She could cheer in the other seasons. Same if we have a football player or a boys basketball player that want to cheer also, they would be able to cheer in the seasons that they are not participating in other athletic events. So there would be 3 squads at the middle school level for those 3 seasons. Those squads could overlap, so they could participate in multiple if they chose to. One of the big things that we think is really important about adding middle school cheerleading, and I know I saw Mr. Garcia at the 8th grade at the boys basketball championships. It's an incredible atmosphere. Hawker Grove added a pep band to it this year, and we'd love to see cheerleading added to create that fun environment for our students and our parents that are attending the games. Just really improving the culture by adding more activities for our students and creating a team, sportsmanship, discipline, hard work. A lot of those same principles that fall into other sporting categories could certainly apply here in cheerleading as well. Developing leadership skills, confidence, and just really truly feeling like they are spirit leaders in the school. We would like to propose that we would have spring tryouts so that the squads can have practice time over the summer or at least be prepared for that fall season to begin, since football does start so quickly in the fall. Our squads would cheer 6 football games. All of the football games are away games for our middle schools, even though we designate a home team and an away game and an away team. We travel to all of our football games because they're held at district stadiums or at Westridge. So our cheer squads would travel to those 6 football games. And then for the boys and girls basketball seasons, they would cheer the home games, not cheer the away games, except for the tournament games. We would transport them to the tournament games, whether that's a play-in game or the championship game. So potentially 6 games for each season. The team structures, we have looked at up to 24 cheerleaders for football. We have the space for them on the sidelines. So that's a great opportunity to involve a lot of students. Stunt groups are typically groups of 4 for cheerleading, so multiples of 4 are where you tend to land when you're planning a squad. And then we would look at 12 for girls basketball and boys basketball, just because the sideline is much limited, and especially in some of our middle schools, they don't have even the same amount of space on the ends. And then we have our coaching staff. Cost estimate, I'll let you talk about the...
Yes, so for an overall cost, we've got 2 kind of different categories here, but coaching staff-wise, this would be a recurring cost. We landed this with a head coach and 1 assistant for each school. We also compared this with our neighbors, and it is in line with what they do as well. So box 10 is, if you were to look those up, that's where our other head coaches are for middle school sports, and that aligns with what's fairly normal to do that. The assistant coach then is just the lesser amount of that. So there's a cost per school that would recur each year of just under $6,000. So we have basically a $30,000 recurring cost for the personnel to be able to coach.
And Mr. Glazer, just a real quick comment. This needs to be negotiated, so if we approve this, we would need to take this to the negotiations team, and that's a supplemental negotiated topic, but this would be our recommendation.
Correct. Sorry about that. And then busing would be the other, that would be a general fund cost. So our bus trips are there. We can count the number of trips, but we believe across the district, because we have to bus to each one of those middle school football games, that adds up just a little bit more. But the busing cost there is $8,500. So you could divide that by 5 or multiply. The total cost is $8,500. So those are the general fund costs. The rest of these are uniforms expenses, equipment expenses, those that can be capital outlay expenditures for us, and also one-time expenditures for the most part. So all of the uniforms are on here. Erica and our middle school ADs did a great job of going through all of those different pieces. They do align with our BSN contract, similar to our high schools. But that initial uniform expense would be there. And then we would have to look down the line to build that back into a uniform rotation. So similar to what we've done with the other sports. The equipment, there is some safety needs that they need, so the biggest piece here is the flexible carpet roll. If you're familiar with wrestling, or if you're familiar with cheer, they're pretty similar. A wrestling mat is broken into 7 different sections. They're 6 foot by 42 feet, and that's what a cheer mat is. They just are, one's vinyl and the other one's more of a carpet type that they can practice on. But that gives them a 2-inch mat to be able to do some things safely there, tumbling, some of those different pieces that our high school is used to. We would make that available and suggest to at the middle school level. But those are one-time costs. We have that a total cost there in equipment at $29,000. So then the total expenses, if you combine everything, it's kind of broken in there into 2 categories again, where you have the capital outlay costs kind of at the top, but then we have the estimated costs annually for the coaching and the buses, but a 1-year total cost of roughly $125,000 to get us started, but then $37,000 to $38,000 annually to keep that going. Okay. The other are facilities. We don't need additional facilities to do so, and this is covered under our training contract with the University of Kansas Health System, so there wouldn't be any additional cost with that. Anything else I might have missed? Otherwise, we're here for questions if you got it.
I do think you skipped over to the Monster Rock and Roller portable Bluetooth sound system.
I did.
It is essential.
It's really important.
That's Erica's.
It's essential practice need for preparing for performances.
Right.
Yeah.
Half a joke, but obviously something that's needed. Right.
But maybe our kids can get a future NIL deal if you're seeing some on March Madness of those kids that are walking the teams out. I don't know. Maybe there's a future in that.
All joking aside, a really cool opportunity for our young people in support of the other programs that we've approved or you've approved in the past. So, there's a consent item for your consideration after you have any questions for them or me.
I really appreciate the detail in the budget. There are no surprises here. It's really clearly spelled out, and appreciate the differentiating kind of the startup costs from what the annual cost would be. This would be for about 200 opportunity for like 250 students, additional kind of participation opportunities?
Yeah.
Up to, could potentially?
Yeah, depending on how many kids want to, you can break them apart, or if they call it,
They can repeat,
just
All
more
right.
opportunities.
Okay, yep. Ms. Borgman.
Thank you for the presentation, and I think this is such a great way for our middle schools to build community, so thank you. Did you say, and I'm sorry if I missed it, tryouts, when will they be held-ish?
Typically, we need to kind of get going on some of those things, and we would actually like to have some of them established before the end of the school year. If you're familiar with the high school schedule, they kind of do so around spring break time. We've got a little more time to be able to do that, but ideally, we would want to know where those participants are and who's going to be involved so that they can hit the ground running in the fall.
Or tumbling? Hit the ground running or tumbling. Sorry, couldn't resist. So I am sure you're well aware, but you know that we have some split feeder pattern schools. And so I just want to make sure, like, I'll just, say from my own area, like Krista McAuliffe, there are not a ton of kids from McAuliffe that go to Northwest, but there are certainly some. And so I just want to make sure, again, I'm sure you're well aware, just want to make sure that no kiddo gets lost in that shuffle. There may be even some Rising Star kids that go to Northwest. And so, again, just want to make sure that no one is kind of slips through the cracks if they're in a split feeder pattern school.
No, that is a tricky question, though.
Thank you.
That's something that we've got to pay attention to, because we need them, the families, to have the information so that they know where they can potentially land. And there are some rules behind that, because you can't try out for one squad, and if you didn't make it at one school, you can't go to another school and try out for theirs and just change schools. So all of this still operates under CASA guidelines as well, even at the middle school level.
Okay, well, we're cheering you on.
Thanks.
Well done.
Ms. Embry.
That was along the same lines of my question. So thank you for bringing this. I really do appreciate seeing what we're doing with middle school sports and football. I think it's been really great to see all that excitement around middle school sports. From my knowledge, we don't have any sports where we're like reaching down into 6th grade and having tryouts. Am I missing something? Is this going to be our first sort of sport that is like a cut sport that is at the middle school?
Well, it doesn't involve them at the 6th grade level. It's just involving trying to figure out who those kids are, so that when they come to the school at the 7th grade level.
Okay, so there's not
So
going to be a
that's-
like end of 6th grade year, they're announcing the
No.
7th grade cheer team and some kids make it and some kids don't, and they're going into middle school with like a.
Right, a typical
I
cheer
didn't make the
tryout
cheer squad.
process. Right. A typical cheer tryout process would be 2 to 3 days of like a mini camp, and then a day of tryouts, so that everybody has the same equal opportunity to prepare and know what they're going to be able to go through, and then they're adjudicated on that and then placed onto a team. But the only one that we really have to kind of get a kickstart to is the fall season. And that's pretty typical for high school as well. And then they can do some things over the summer. And that's not any different than like we can have basketball camps and football camps and some of those different things. But that at those sports, there's not cuts involved.
And there's not in this
trying to-
either, is that what you're saying?
No, there can be just for.
They just won't happen until they start 7th grade? I guess my antenna's up for like a 6th grader who's already nervous about middle school and now tries out for cheer and finds out they have a whole summer to be like, I didn't make the
It would be
team.
a good problem to have if ideally, you don't have to cut. For football, and you've all been to our football games, you see our high school cheerleaders out there, tons of cheerleaders, tons of dancers. They're not necessarily cutting per se, as long as they're all able to participate at somewhat of an equal level, so that they all. But it does add cost to how many uniforms you're going to have, how many coaches you're going to have, some of those different things. So a typical number that they felt was safe on, and compared to some of our area schools, would be 24 and then 12 and 12. But we do have to be careful indoors, because while they're playing 5-on-5 on the court for basketball, we probably can't have more than 12 on the sideline.
Okay,
I think, so we directly answer your question.
thank you.
There could be some cuts. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, just, we have cuts with soccer in middle school, so it wouldn't be the only activity that would have a cut. We do have that at the middle school level.
Though on the like earlier end of a cut, if we're doing spring tryouts, I guess that's what I'm wondering, is if it's an earlier time for kids to find out they've been cut, as opposed to once they start middle school. Do you see what I'm asking? We're essentially potentially cutting some 6th graders.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, going into the summer, they would probably know.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a little tough. That'll be that'll be an experience for us.
It's challenging for everyone, yeah.
Yep. Ms. Osmond?
Cheerleading is outside of my scope of expertise as a parent, but my kids have played other sports, and the costs associated with uniforms and equipment and lessons and all of that. I don't know what the cost of that is for cheer for someone who's participating in a private program, but I would anticipate if this is what it is costing the district as a public program, that there would be some cost savings for families to be able to access cheer through the school district. And I'm wondering if you have a general rough estimate of what type of opportunity this opens up for families who might not have otherwise been able to participate in cheer, like just to speak to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. As a mom of former college cheerleader and former college dancer that got their tuition paid by going to school on those scholarships, there was a lot of investment on the early side of that. I would say that easily I spent $500 a month on lessons, sometimes more than that, and often more than that on equipment. So it is a tremendous savings to be able to participate in a school-based program rather than a club program where you do have quite a bit more expense that goes along with that activity.
So will there be an opportunity based on this needing to be like a cut sport potentially, or is a cut sport, if a family has not participated in cheer up until, a sixth grader showing interest going into the seventh grade year, is that 3-day window where they're having a chance to learn a routine, does that really set students up with a false sense of hope that they're going to be able to compete with kids who've been in club? Or do you think that we have a shot of giving a chance to kids to participate in a sport they would not otherwise have had a chance to participate in?
I do think it gives them a really good opportunity because we're not going to ask them to perform at a tryout something that they would have needed years of experience to be able to master in those 3 days. What they would have in terms of a tryout, they would learn during that 3-day period. And when they're on a team, they're typically working with similar skilled peers if they're on a club team, where in a school setting, they're not always working with similar skilled peers. They have different levels of ability. And so sometimes that levels the playing field also.
And then do we have an idea on the scope of interest from participation from students? So we're saying a team of roughly 25 or 24 kids. Do we anticipate that we've got 75 kids potentially interested? I know I was not necessarily anticipating seeing the middle school football teams of like what appeared to be 100 young men standing on the sideline. Like, I don't even know where they all came from, but they're clearly not all on, the A team. Some of them are B team or potentially even like a C team because they're not cut in football. But with this, so do we know how many kids maybe want to participate that we're going to be able to meet, or that might get left out potentially?
I think just like any sport, it kind of varies year to year. That interest level would vary year to year. We based the number for our proposal on what we were seeing in terms of numbers in terms of youth football in the past, as well as what's moving up to our high school, what those high school numbers look like.
Okay.
And those are similar numbers too, that also we still have volleyball, cross country, the football, all those different pieces where they're not necessarily going to be involved in both of those. So
yeah,
there's an educated guess of how many kids.
And not every kid wants to do cheer. I don't think, I'm not trying to say that. I just, I certainly want to support students who might not have otherwise had an opportunity to do so, and yet also don't want to be creating a scenario in which we have lots of kids that are potentially disappointed. So it's a needle to thread. It's not a crisis by any means. But thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you for the report. I really value you referencing the Johnson County, youth football program that has been a staple in the county for such a long time. I played 1 year of 8th grade football for Shawnee Mission North back in the day. Didn't last very long, but I had a sister at North. She played every sport, but was never a cheerleader. So I'm kind of confused on the numbers game that we're pulling from 24, a squad of 24 for football, and then for basketball with A1 through A3, would that group of 12 be cheering for that entire period, or would they interchange with the other 12, or just coaches would have to make up some of the numbers? I'm I'm sure, because it just seems like an extended period of time for the same 12 to be cheering. I mean, that's,
They would most likely rotate through
Yeah,
the games.
okay.
So on and off the court through the
and
games.
and also that's depending if there are enough, let's say there are a bunch of basketball girls who are also wanting to be, or guys that want to be on the cheer team too, so, okay. I'm sure it'll work out fine, but question on interest from staff? I don't know, I'm sure we haven't, maybe people are talking about it now, maybe not, but I really value having staff members be our coaches. I think we can all attest to how important that can be. Wanted to know if there was, any hope that these would all be our folks in our buildings. I know that's not always a reality.
Building, yes. So
Yeah.
I can't speak to all of the buildings because I haven't talked to the staff members in all buildings,
Yeah.
but definitely in my building.
Sure, okay.
I'm looking at you, Miss Lewis.
I can see.
I'm just really disappointed in myself that I missed an opportunity to bring my pom-poms to a board meeting. And,
The one time.
I'm blaming it on the fact that it's the day after coming back from spring break, but
I was ready to
yes.
see it too.
I would love to support and be a sponsor, yes, Coach.
I think those are all really good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, we obviously see value in teachers or paras or whomever working with our kids, but of course, we do rely on our Rule 10 coaches as well. Yeah, I think the piece that we would note is that this is potentially, 50 extra kids who could have a spot participating, and I would want us to guard against those really difficult conversations. So if we could find a way to kind of massage the 24 and the 12 and the 12 and make sure that any kid who wanted to participate could participate somewhere in the seasons, that would be my hope.
Yep.
Well, and if there was some sort of overwhelming interest, you could come back to us
100%.
and
Right.
we could reassess
100%.
things.
I love hearing that. Thank you
I'm
for.
just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Some of these are educated guesses, trying to get those going. When you mentioned football, it was nerve-wracking trying to figure out how many helmets are we going to have, because we did not want to disappoint a kid and give them that opportunity. But there are some things that we can do that are unique that say, when you keep them in groups of 4, those that went to the state basketball tournament, Keisha runs that. They only allow a certain number of cheerleaders on the floor at a given time. Because we have large cheer squads, we just split our kids. So the first quarter, or however a coach determined to do that, up until the first time out, but you can rotate those kids in and out. If we have the numbers, we have ways to get kids involved. But it also is a starting place to know, okay, what do we think is a safe number? How many uniforms should we come up with? If we miss the mark, and you hope you don't, because you don't want to disappoint kids, then there's some other things that we can do, and we can quickly remedy that if need be.
All right, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You've got a
guys.
lot of support
Appreciate
here
you.
for that,
Yep.
yeah. All right, our final discussion item, assessment update, item 3.3.
Yeah, switching gears again. So Ms. Lewis, Associate Superintendent of Leadership and Learning, and Dr. Grumman, Director of Assessment and Research, talking about some, what I think are really exciting things for our 2024 assessments.
Thank you so much for giving Dr. Grumman and I the opportunity to provide you with an assessment update this evening. We also provided you with a glossary of terms for you to reference. We do recognize that a lot of times we utilize acronyms, and even though we might spell those out and talk about them during the presentation, we thought that might be a nice reference for you to have, and we plan on doing that moving forward with our Leadership and Learning Board presentations. So to start us off, we always want to connect our work to our strategic plan. And so tonight, we'll be focusing on the objectives of every student will achieve academic success through a challenging and personalized learning plan. And every student will develop and utilize personal resilience while mastering essential competencies that lead to college and career readiness. And then, of course, the work that we're talking about tonight is under Strategy 1 with learning. This has become a really familiar slide in the district, so hopefully you're getting familiar with it as we continue to show the connections of our work. So as a district, as part of the Kansas Education Systems Accreditation, and we know that as KESA, our district school improvement process, we identify goals and measure our progress through data, and some of that data we'll be talking about this evening. And so our goals also have action steps that are aligned with our district strategic plan, because we know that the strategic plan drives our work. And then also we have the school improvement plans where our buildings have individual building goals, and they also then use data to monitor their progress on those goals. And then of course at the heart of this slide is our portrait of a graduate, because we know at the heart of our work is our students. And some of the data we're talking about tonight is what's really important, because we're really measuring their individual success and preparing them, as we talked about, for college and career readiness. So Dr. Grumman's going to go ahead and get us started.
Thanks for the outstanding intro. As noted, we're going to take a high-level look at our mid-year assessment results, and we'll also take a brief look at results from relatively new assessment called the iReady assessments, which are embedded within our latest math resource adoption. If you've been with me for some prior year winter updates, I've had years where we've got lots of like Graphapalooza, where we might go through 50 or 60 graphs. This night is not one of those 50 or 60 graph nights. The theme here tonight is high-level overview with a much smaller number of graphs than what I've sometimes provided at this time of year. So at this time of year, in the mid-year, in the winter, we use two different interim assessments to evaluate whether students are on track for future success in their reading or math skills. So one in this case is the Acadience Literacy Collection of Measures, which are a series of short probes, usually administered individually, one-on-one. You might remember Acadience by its former name, DIBELS, or it used to be known as Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. So this assessment has been around for a long, long time, approximately 20 years for us. It's evolved and morphed and rebranded a couple different times. One notable Acadience literacy probe that I want to point out is the Oral Reading Fluency Assessment, which consists of a 1-minute reading of a grade level reading passage. I think there's nothing more powerful than sitting one-on-one with a student to hear them read aloud. There are many nuances that a skilled teacher can pick up on that could not necessarily be detected in any other way. So that's a component of that Acadience assessment. The other assessment we're going to review data on is NWEA MAP. And speaking of acronyms, NWEA stands for the Northwest Evaluation Association. NWEA is a nonprofit organization that provides assessment solutions, professional learning, and research services with a primary focus on the measures of academic progress, or MAP test. And just for a sort of a corporate overview, as of 2023, NWEA is now a nonprofit division of the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Corporation, which HMH, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, is a textbook publisher, a for-profit textbook publisher company with a nonprofit division. So it's kind of an interesting arrangement going on right now with them. NWEA MAP is an online computer adaptive assessment that measures student mastery and long-term growth of reading and math skills. It takes students about an hour to complete on average, although some students will take a little bit less and some students more. The Acadience and NWEA measures complement each other well in our decision-making processes and the kinds of things they measure. There is a theme that you'll see in most of these slides this evening in terms of the results, and of course I have to have an analogy for this. The best data trends are like smoking a brisket, okay? Low and slow. Small incremental growth over, yeah, now you're hungry, right? That salad, yeah. So that small incremental growth over multiple years indicates systematic and systemic change. In contrast, sometimes if I see like sudden increases in performance, they're often followed by disappointing crashes. So low and slow is really what we aim for long-term sustainable growth. So moving into Acadience briefly. Each composite score is associated with a performance level that serves as an indicator of future reading success. Students scoring at or above benchmark, which are in the green and blue areas, are Students in those areas are likely to be on track for success in reading later on down the road, while students scoring below or well below the orange and the darker orange spaces are likely to need some kind of additional instructional supports in reading. So this slide provides a snapshot from mid-year of last year and mid-year of this year. It's not a cohort movement, it's just whoever took the test last year, and then this year is whoever took the test this year in the middle of the year in each spot. So last year, 66% of students in grades K through 6 scored at or above benchmark, while 22% were well below benchmark. This year, we really see an overall 2% shift after rounding, with 67% at or above benchmark and 21% well below. So the at or above increased by approximately 1%, and the well below is a decrease of about 1%. I'm only showing 2 years on here because Acadians did move to a new data system in 23-24, but I will confirm if we even go back 2 years, the 22-23 results were the same as the 23-24, so we were flat for the first 2 years, and then we see this incremental increase or improvement in the winter snapshot this year. Did it skip that?
Something's.
There you are.
I think you were trying to skip me. So as Dr. Grumman shared the overview of Acadians' literacy data, he's going to then move into the measure of academic progress, the MAP data. But we want to take a moment to really connect this work and talk about it in relation to our district WIGs, our wildly important goals. So WIG number 1 is to increase student achievement and performance through targeted interventions with a grade level focus for all students. So our goal is that we have all students being able to master grade level standards. So we use the Acadians and the MAP data to monitor our progress towards this goal, and then buildings use the data to not only monitor building and grade level progress, but also individual student progress. So as you can see with this WIG for Acadians and MAP literacy, our goal in grades K through 2 is to increase the number of students scoring at benchmark from 69% to 74% on the Acadians composite score in reading. So this would be at the end of the year, and this would be what we would consider a lag measure, meaning our data would be gathered at the end of the school year, and it would inform us as whether we met that goal for the school year. However, we don't want to wait until the end of the school year to look at data. So we also want to be monitoring progress towards this goal through what we call lead measures. And that's data that we reflect on throughout the year that we use to make decisions regarding instructional strategies and then individualized support for students. So we assess students at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. But also students that are receiving additional intervention, we would also monitor them, what we call progress monitoring. And so we use that Acadians assessment to do monitoring weekly and biweekly to see their progress towards that benchmark. So just really want to communicate how our teachers work in the classroom to not only have these end of the year lag measures that we share with you, but also those lead measures that along the way, they're working in their professional learning communities, they're looking at that data, and then they're determining what strategies are effective or what other interventions do we need to provide for our students. So we wanted to give you that snapshot of how that works in the literacy world.
Okay, so transitioning to MAP reading data, again, at a very high level, I'm trying to organize the data in the way that's somewhat parallel to the Acadians data. In other words, we're looking at which students are likely to be on track for success in subsequent measures and which students are likely to need additional supports. So here we're looking at, again, snapshots of NWA MAP reading results from the last 3 years. It's based on just whoever was testing at that point from each of those respective years in the wintertime, typically December, sometimes January. The boundaries between the colors are at the 33rd and 67th percentile. What this means is that nationally, 33% of students score above the 67th percentile, and 33% of students score below the 33rd percentile. So typically from a national perspective, you'd see a third, and a third. In our Shawnee Mission data, 43 to 44% of our students score above the 67th percentile, and approximately 23% score below the 33rd percentile. In other words, the data does indicate that our students are performing well on this assessment collectively. Also, as you look at the 3 years of snapshots, the trend does look pretty flat. I will say, however, though, that changes in the Acadience data typically precedes our shifts in the NWA map results, in part because of their proximity to some of the learning that students are doing. Also keep in mind that each snapshot has a little bit different population of students which may factor in. So this includes students who might move in or out of the district, which is a similar approach that we see with state assessments and others where you're taking a snapshot of students at that moment in time. We also do follow students by cohort and all sorts of other ways that offer other views of students' status and growth trajectories, as Pam mentioned in the previous slide. Here's another look at kind of that same data set from a little bit different perspective. This slide shows the average RIT score from each of the 3 years. So RIT stands for RASH unit. It's named after, I think it's a Dutch psychometrician. So a RASH unit is the standard score that NWEA uses for their assessments. The RIT score is not tied to any grade level or age. For example, a score of 200 is associated with same instructional level regardless of what grade the student is in or the time of year that they took the test. So this graph reinforces how remarkably stable our NWA reading results are right now, and also how our students, again, are continuing to perform in relation to that national norm. So the average RIT score has been 207.9 for 3 consecutive years, and that's across about 13,000 students each time. And you can also see that normative average across these grade levels is 205.4, and the norm is the normative averages are set about every 5 years, so that is not changing as well. Here's another view of our data, and this looks at the current year slides. This is the test that the students took just 2-3 months ago. Okay. It shows the latest average RIT score by grade level in relation to their respective national norms. So the blue bar is our Shawnee Mission students, the gray bar is the national norms. We see that students are outperforming these norms at each grade level. We also see that the gap between Shawnee Mission averages and that national norm increases as the grade levels increase. So a good example here is at 3rd grade, we are at 195.3 and the norm is at 193.9, so about less than 2 points difference. And if we go up to 8th grade, our average is 224.7 and the national norm is 220.5. So we're almost 4 points higher than the national norm when you reach that 8th grade level. And then here, and it's a similar kind of picture, we have the latest map reading snapshots using those 33rd and 67th percentile boundaries that you saw earlier. We see that in grades 1, 2, and 3, about 30% of our students are below that 33rd percentile and likely need additional reading support, whereas in middle school that percentage is at 20% or less. So there's some differences by level. I think there's good news here that even though we're not necessarily looking at cohort movement, but this does serve as an indicator that effective early intervention does lead to success in those later grade levels. Again, similarly on the other side, we see 45% of our middle school students scoring above the 67th percentile compared to our 40% of students scoring above the 67th percentile in those other earlier grades. Again, early foundational skills and reading does set students up for success in those later grades. Shifting to mathematics, we're going to look at Acadience and NWE map data in the same manner as with reading, so we'll move a little faster through these slides. And then we'll finish out with a discussion of the iReady assessments that we talked about earlier and their relationship with our NWA map results. So in math, we are seeing what I would classify as tremendous incremental growth in student performance in the Acadience numeracy measures. Again, in the 2 years here, and there's a third year I'm going to mention, 2 years ago, Our students, we had 54% of our students in the blue and the green areas. That increased to 62% in 23-24, and then finally to 66% for this year. So we've increased by about 6 or 8% percent of our students annually scoring in those at or above benchmark areas. At the same time, the percentage of students scoring the well below benchmark areas decreased from 25% 2 years ago to 20%, which you see in this graph, and now to 18% in this last year's winter benchmark period.
So as we did with literacy, we want to talk about how this math data is connected to our district wildly important goals. So we're going to take you back to WIG number 1, which was to increase student achievement and performance through targeted interventions with a grade level focus for all students. And so we use that Acadience numeracy and the MAP data to monitor our progress towards this goal. And then again, buildings use that data to not only monitor building and grade level progress, but individual student progress. So when you look at our goal, we have the goal for K2 is to increase the number of students scoring at benchmark from 73% to 75% on the Acadience composite score in math. And so again, this is a lag measure, the measure that we would look at the end of the year to see if we met that goal. Again, as with reading, we want to have progress monitoring and we want to have ongoing data assessments that drive our instruction and help us assist students with their learning. So again, we would assess them at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. And then students that receive that additional intervention, you might hear sometimes the term RTI or response to intervention. That's what we're doing. We're providing an intervention that a student needs, and then we're measuring that with the data assessment tool to see their progress. So are they responding in a positive way and making gains based on the intervention we're providing? And if they are, we of course would continue with that intervention as long as that's needed. And if they're not, we would of course adjust that intervention. So we really use this data on an ongoing basis so that we have not only the lag measures that we share with you, but the lead measures that again drive our instructional decision making. That's the power of our professional learning communities and our teachers and their expertise in determining the instructional strategies they use with their students. And of course, we also use our MAP data, especially at that building level and at grade levels, to reflect on that data and drive our instructional decisions. A change this year is the implementation of the iReady assessment, and it's part of the curriculum adoption in grades 6 through 8. And I have just loved the opportunity to go out and meet with staff and observe professional learning communities firsthand in our schools this year. It's been just really impressive to see how our teachers are using that data. It's a valuable lead measure, and that data helps determine and really shows the teachers who's mastered this standard, who's mastered this concept. It also shows them who needs pre-teaching and review, because our goal is not to wait and see if a student doesn't get it, but more so, where are their skills before we teach, before we give that first teach, and how do we pre-teach so that they are more successful and get more out of that first teach in that core instruction. So that data really helps our teachers to determine that. And then, of course, it also helps to show if the students master that standard and if we need reteaching. So I'm really excited to see the continued impact of this new assessment on student learning and follow up more with you next year with that when we move into that K through 8.
So as we look at our MAP data and mathematics, again, the boundaries that we're using in this visual are between the colors are at that 33rd and 67th percentile. And again, if you remember, normally, nationally, you would see a third, and a third. In our case, for most of our, for this sequence of years, we have somewhere between 40 and 42% of our students scoring above that 67th percentile level, and approximately 23% scoring below the 33rd percentile. Again, the overall data indicates that our students are performing well on this assessment annually. However, similar to reading, this 3-year trend looks a little flat or a little up and down. But when you look at it from a different perspective, again, if I go to that next slide, and we start looking at those average RIT scores, we do see some incremental growth within the system. So here we are looking at a 3-year increase You see where their average RIT scores are increasing from 212.2 to 212.9 to 213.1. We're cooking the brisket. Okay? Again, this reflects that low and slow theme. We should also note in relation to that national norm of 210, Shawnee Mission students are outscoring their peers on average from a national perspective. Here again is a view of the most recent average RIT scores by grade level compared to the respective national averages. And like with reading, we do observe two things. One is that our students are outperforming those national norms. And we are seeing a larger difference in the upper grade levels compared to those earlier grade levels. When we view NWA MAP results by grade level, again, using the 33rd and 67th percentile boundaries, we see a greater percentage of higher performing students in the upper grade levels compared to the early grade levels again, which is, again, this is really good news for middle school when we see that kind of performance at those at grades 6, 7, and 8. One of the curious phenomenon in math is that it's a little different from reading in that the percent of students scoring below the 33rd percentile is consistent across all grade levels, with around 24% of students showing a need for additional supports. You get just a slightly different pattern from what we observed on the reading assessment. And now for the finale, as you may recall, and Pam talked a little bit about it, right? iReady was adopted as our core math resource for grades K through 8. 6 through 8, grades 6 through 8 was an adoption that started this current school year, and then K5 will begin next year with its first year of implementation. So included in this resource is something called the iReady Diagnostic Assessment, which is administered 3 times a year. It's almost like a gatekeeper exam. Students generally can't access the resources until they've taken that diagnostic assessment. There are a couple of small workarounds if an individual student is having, if we need to accommodate a student, but otherwise 99% of the students need to take that initial iReady assessment in order to then access the personalization features that are available in the system. Since it does add to the district's assessment footprint, one of the things that we need to ask the question about is how or whether are there any differences between the iReady assessment and the NWA MAP assessment specific to mathematics. So we're going to start with some of the basic features that are identical. Both of these assessments are computerized, item-level adaptive assessments that take approximately an hour to complete. They're about 50 items, okay? Both assessments provide standard scores, kind of like a RIT score. There's a standard score on the iReady side. Both have a national percentile rating, both have some growth trajectories involved, and both have highly interactive reports, okay? There are a few differences between the assessments. The main difference is that NWA MAP is what I would call resource agnostic. In other words, NWA has historically not been tied to a specific resource, which has some advantages and disadvantages. We've been a partner with NWA since 2005, okay? One advantage is that when a curricular resource changes, the assessment doesn't also have to change, which is why, again, we have that in the longitudinal data going back 18 years. However, on the other side, the iReady assessment connects directly with the instructional resources, which saves staff some hours of extra labor trying to match resources with student needs as indicated by the data, because the data automatically then connects in with that instructional resource and some of that personalization. This year, we did administer the iReady math assessment. We are administering iReady 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. And we went ahead and administered the math assessment just once this winter for double testing comparison, so that we have some comparative data that we can look at this evening to see what the results actually look like when students experience these assessments. So here's what we found. In the NWA MAP iReady math comparisons, grades 6, 7, and 8 is where we're sitting. First is correlation coefficient. The correlation coefficient between these two assessments ranges from 0.8 to 0.86, okay? A perfect one-to-one correlation would be like a 1.0. So statistically, given all the other human factors associated with taking assessments, you really can't get much stronger than a 0.8 correlation coefficient that we're seeing here, okay? And the next several graphs are going to walk through this to show you how those things line up. So here, we look at those, this distribution of students on those 33rd and 67th percentile thresholds. If we use the percentiles that are provided in each of those respective assessments, the results are nearly identical. So if anything it's different, it's that students maybe scored slightly higher on that iReady assessment. You can see, for example, just on the top bar, 44% of our students on NWA MAP scored above the 67th percentile. On the grades 6 through 8 combined iReady, it was 45%. Okay, and you can see how those look for those individual grade levels as well. Okay, but in general, 44 to 45% of students scored above the 67th percentile on both assessments. 22 to 23% of our students scoring below that 33rd percentile. So the distributions there look nearly identical. Now, who's a fan of scatter plots? Anybody? So this is what the 6th grade data looks like. Each dot, imagine each dot is a student with their NWA MAP RIT score on that horizontal axis, and it's mapped against their iReady standard score on the vertical axis. So it's plotted on the grid. Okay? It's not surprising to see a few outliers. Typically, it's especially at the tail ends, right at the bottom left and the upper right. But overall, these dots are clustered closely together along a regression line, along the line. This is what a correlation of 0.86 looks like. They're very tightly aligned with each other. This is what 7th grade looks like. There are a few more outliers compared to 6th grade, but it is middle school after all. And the student, again, the student results are clustered along that same linear path. This is what a 0.84 correlation coefficient looks like. So very similar to the 6th grade results. And this is what 8th grade looks like. Again, there are a few more outliers at 8th grade, but the correlation is still above 0.8. So looking ahead, one question that we're wrestling with, right, is it necessary to have students taking both NWA math and iReady math in our testing footprint? Do we need to do those 3 times a year? At the same time, if we move strictly to iReady, does it link our assessment tools with the curriculum resource adoption cycle? So there are a number of questions that we're discussing along the way as to what this is going to look like moving down the road. So again, this data is going to be used to inform our longitudinal planning related to this portion of our testing footprint.
So when we talk about planning for 25, 26, we'll be expanding iReady math resource and assessments from 6 to 8 to K through 8, as we talked about. I think what's really been exciting about that and a great advantage for us is that we already have teachers in 6 through 8 that have had a year under their belt. They're almost going to be like mini I-coaches for us in our schools. And we've already had teachers from other grade levels going into 6th grade to observe because it's definitely a shift in teaching. There's a lot of student engagement, a lot of student talk about math and collaboration. It's just really fun to see. So excited to share some sneak peeks into the classroom next year around iReady. But I think we just are in a great spot to have 6 through 8 already implementing that. We're also going to be continuing to expand the number of teachers getting letters training. So that's that structured literacy training that's going to impact instruction around literacy. Of course, that also is measured by the Acadience that we discussed. We're also looking to restart our structured walkthroughs with looking at a new platform and looking at those effective instructional strategies in the classroom and being able to give feedback and just really tying that with our instruction along with our student progress and success. And then continuing to support the use of our Kansas assessment program and utilizing interim assessments. We really focused on that this year in our professional learning communities, our teachers looking at those assessments and then determining their next steps with instruction instruction. And then continuing to monitor our student progress through those lead and lag measures with our wildly important goals that we talked about during the presentation. So just really a lot of work in leadership and learning and focusing in on what's happening in the classroom and how our teachers are working together and how we're supporting them through professional learning, but also providing them great resources to just really provide effective instruction in the classroom. So we're available for any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you so much for our winter assessment report. We're a data crowd here, we love this. Okay, so Ms. Boyd-Norena.
Always love the data. I do. I think all of us can
Yeah.
agree to that.
Yeah.
I have two questions, but I'll start with one. You're proud, and we're proud, that we are gathering data on how our students are doing and measuring that. Are we sharing these with the parents, families, support? Where else besides the teachers or inside the classroom is this data being shared?
Yeah, that's a lot of important data that we share at our parent conferences with our parents. Also really excited about when I was having some of those conversations with teachers individually around the iReady. One of the things that came up was a great report that is available to parents through that we'll be sharing at parent conferences. So we want to really be intentional with, as we shift to this iReady resource, really utilizing the reports that are provided for parents and then explaining that to parents as well.
Ms. Ousley.
I was tracking, and it seemed like you were tied on dad jokes with researcher jokes there between the brisket and the scatter plot, but that is besides my question. So I have one question about the scatter plot for the 7th graders, because I think your answer to it might help me understand better what we're plotting there. So we've got an outlier up here in the corner, in the middle of the page.
Right.
So what's happening, obviously you don't know the answer to this, but like what would cause an outlier to that extent, potentially, that the difference
Right.
in the two is just a bad day, potentially on one of the days when they took the test? Really, like, that's what it could come down to, because that is illustrative
Yeah,
of other
or if a
things too,
student
but-
elected to randomly start guessing, or, I mean, there are things that I would really have to look at what that is. Or is there a chance that the wrong student took the assessment? Or, there's something I would have to look at to see which part of that is actually the outlier, right? Is it?
Well, just for me, just understanding
right.
what the outlier is helps to explain how all of this is so uniform with little differential for the rest of the comparison, right? So
Right.
like the other kids are performing at the same level, and the reason it's so tight is because the difference between the iReady and the difference between the MAP is it's capturing the performance of the student across the board. So then that leads into my question with regards to the MAP testing. I think there's more broader familiarity with MAP, one, within our district because we've utilized it for a while, but also throughout the state. And so my one potential question would be, if we were to move over to using the data from the iReady program or the iReady testing, which if we have it already, that would make sense, why test the kids double. But does that potentially hinder us when we're doing comparisons like statewide if other districts are not utilizing that data?
Yeah, not necessarily. There's a number of districts that have shifted away from NWA, and they're using another assessment platform that's out there that is being subsidized by the state at this point. But so that there are at least 3 major platforms that are out there. iReady is actually being used by one of our neighboring districts in math, so we had to have shareable comparative data if we needed to with at least one of our districts to the south.
It's nice to at least have the other shareable data so that we don't appear like we're on an island with what assessment tools we're
We
using.
wouldn't be
so-
on an island with either one of those.
Right, okay, all right, well, thank you. I appreciate the brisket joke.
Can I ask a follow-up question there?
Sure, you bet.
Sorry, thank you, Dr. Grumman and Pam, I really appreciate it. On that same point, are there just more students? How do the numbers of participants compare between iReady and NWA MAP? Because if you're norming against a small population, there's a lot more room to say, oh, it just happens to be that more suburban districts use iReady and a more broad group of students are taking NWA MAP. Are they comparable student populations if we're comparing our students to the iReady population versus the NWA MAP
I haven't dug deeply into that level of detail on the norming studies. But what I do know is that whatever they are, they match pretty well with the data that we're looking
Okay.
at. You know, historically, whether it's NWEA or iReady or some these large assessment systems, they've had a tendency to be, you know, have heavier populations on like large suburban districts. But I think that would be the case for both of them. Although when they do their norming studies, they try to, you know, use some data magic to sort of parse out what a representative sample would look like. And they're getting more sophisticated with that each time they do a new norming study.
Okay.
This conversation is really good. We've debated this quite a bit as a leadership team, and we are not in agreement with where we want to go. And so one of the things I think we all need to keep in mind is what's going to be the most useful for our teachers, boots on the ground, right? These are lead measures, and so what's going to be the most impactful, effective lead measure to help direct instruction and to move our kids forward? So we're not ready to make that recommendation yet. I mean, David and I think, are aligned, but then, yeah, so we're having these same conversations internally about
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons for sharing this, and we also shared it with our leadership and learning team today as well. But currently in 6th, 7th, and 8th, we have the iReady assessment, but we also have that winter map assessment. So then Dan can look at that as a program annually too.
Awesome. Can I ask a follow-up question? And I'm going to take your brisket metaphor, and I'm just going to keep running with it because I liked it. Because a question that comes to me a lot as a board member is some version of how many thermometers do we really need in this brisket to know that it's cooking low and slow? Because when you pile these up together, you know, you've got the Kansas State Assessment, you've got iReady, you've got Acadience, you've got MAP, then do it again for reading and math, and then do something for science and social studies, and suddenly it feels like your kid's taking a test every other day. And when are they supposed to learn? You know, these are the questions we get. So what do you hear teachers using the most inside?
You have different parts of the brisket. You have your burn ends.
Okay. He wants a lot of thermometers. I'm listening.
Yeah. So and some of these, like the Acadience measures, are quick but personalized, right? And so that's a different kind of experience in measurement. NWA MAP and iReady are less personalized because you're at a computer, and so you don't really have so much of that adult interaction. So the level of skill that you're measuring is a little bit different. NWA MAP and iReady are going to pick up on some resiliency, some grit, because you have to make it through a 50-item test under which you're going to be exposed. I mean, it's designed so to find where you're about 50% correct. So every student is guaranteed to be exposed to items they've never seen before. Whereas on the Acadience measure, those are grade level assessments. A reading passage, that's grade level reading passage. A nonsense word measurement, they're all grade levels. So they're all things that are sort of, those aren't designed to find where the student can't answer the question. Whereas the adaptive assessments, it's looking for where is it that you're going to have the most difficulty. And then the other part that happens then is that you kind of have to help students with is when you encounter an item that you don't know what to do with, it's kind of okay to put your best guess and move on. And there is some, I'd say, training around how to navigate an adaptive assessment that's different from that Acadience measure. So that becomes part of the full conversation. So you don't want to just measure the burn ends.
Also, I think Dr. Schumacher alluded to it as well. This was something that we struggled with initially when we were bringing iReady into the mix, of just that fact of over-testing kids, right? Of just constantly testing students. And so that's kind of what we knew that there was going to be a bridge because we had this contract with MAP still that we were going to utilize. And once we need to kind of determine, once we get to the end of that contract, okay, which one is going to make the most sense for Shawnee Mission? Is it good? We're not going to, I don't see us being able to continue to do both, right? We did reduce some of the MAP, like I think we're doing winter to winter. Instead of 3 times, it's that winter to winter MAP testing. So that was one of the things that we did try to cut down on the number of testing.
That makes a lot of sense. I think there's still always opportunity for just communication to parents. I can put my parent hat on now and say, like, I get so many reports home from school about their scores, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm on the school board, and I don't know how to make sense of all this, and I think what you want is a limited enough set of information or like something to help parents know how to make sense of it all, because there's just a lot coming home, and then you add in those, the CFAs and I'm like, I don't know, somebody call me when there's a problem, because there's a lot coming home.
Yep. Good point.
Mary?
Oh, yeah,
Couple
Mr. Westbrook.
couple of questions. This is really impressive information and very helpful. I want to make a couple of comments to see if you agree, Professor, on the takeaways. One of my takeaways here would be, if you look at that it's a classic statement about whether a glass is half full or half empty, and the optimist says it's half full, the pessimist says half empty. But I think the question here is, what's the trend? Is the glass filling up or is it evaporating? I get the takeaway here that the trend is good, that we're generally getting better, and I think that's a call for optimism. We need to look at what we're doing well and keep doing it. I know there are some glitches here that we have to look at and always have to concentrate on, but I'm encouraged by what I hear. Now, is that an impression that is a fair takeaway from what you've shared?
I'd say, yeah, that'd be a correct impression.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the question I have is this. There was a time when Shawnee Mission and other school districts could compare their test results to comparable school systems across the country, maybe suburban Phoenix, suburban Chicago, suburban Washington, D.C., and other places that might be comparable in terms of demographics, wealth, commitment, expenditures, and so forth. Is it possible to look at that kind of, I'm going to ask that question and one other one, to take that kind of a subset and look at that comparison? And the second question, do we have a way of looking at the performance of kids who have been uniquely educated in Shawnee Mission and only in Shawnee Mission? I'm talking about looking, for example, at the performance of an 8th grade student who started here in preschool, or at least kindergarten, and has been exposed only to Shawnee Mission education. We have a lot of kids who move in from other places in the district, a lot of kids who actually move from one school to another. But can you isolate that data and give us a snapshot or a picture of how we're performing there? So those are two questions. Number one, can we compare ourselves with other suburban school systems with comparable demographics and other statistical comparables? And second, can we isolate our unique Shawnee Mission students and how they're doing? So
I'll start with the second question. I can do all kinds of follow
With
all
your
kinds
brisket?
of yeah. So to answer, is it possible to go back and say, here is a group of students that started with it at X grade level, and yes, they were with us for subsequent years. Yeah, that is a doable project. It would take a little bit of time to make sure that you eliminate students that may have left and then come back. But is that possible? Yes. To follow a cohort of students and see, we'd have to be thinking about what's the research question? If we knew that information, then what decision would it
And that's a very
help or not,
legitimate, that's a very, very legitimate question. There's an expense issue, there's an effort issue, and there's a value issue. I get that. And I'm not asking you to do it, I'm just asking, is it a path we could explore?
Is it possible? Oh, definitely, definitely. So, yeah, for data that we have, that's a possibility. So going back to the first question is, do we have comparable data across states and other metro areas? And that's very difficult to come across. Because there's not a common national, the closest national assessment was the NAEP, the National Assessment for Educational Progress, which historically only gives you state-level data, and then if you happen to be a very large, hundreds of thousands of student school district, you might get your own report. And so that's what would be used in like the nation's report card, or when they when that sort of the state of public schools nationally comes about, they're using the NAEP data. We don't get district data back from that assessment. Sometimes what researchers might do is do sort of a three-way comparison. They will take our state assessment, map it to the NAEP, and then they'll take somebody else's state assessment, map that to the NAEP, and they'll sort of try to match those things up, and that's how they come up with some of those other comparisons. And that would take some work, and it makes a certain number of assumptions about the alignment between those assessments. So that's I'd say that's less possible to make those comparisons across metro areas. ACT is another one if you sought out other districts with similar demographics, but then you'd have to look at their ACT participation rates to make sure they were similar, and do that. So there's a small number of opportunities, but there's not a data warehouse that I'm aware of where you can easily pull that up.
Well, let me just say thank you for the answer. And I first and foremost want to value this information by, number one, how does it inform our faculty and our curriculum development and our work with parents and kids? I mean, we really want this to be in service to helping the individual student and the development of curriculum that is teaching them what they need to learn and succeed going forward. And second, is it valuable to how we're performing against others? But I think it's really important for us not to get all wrapped up in only how we're doing compared with others at the expense of not informing our faculty or parents on how we're doing with individual kids and what can be done to form a closer, more meaningful, more powerful partnership. This is hard stuff. When we look at this is one of the ways we try to assess how we're doing and what we need to do better, and it takes self-reflection, it takes honesty, it takes courage, and it takes science. And I appreciate your devotion to the science part, because we have to look at reality here, and it's very, very helpful. And I thank you for your good work.
I'm going to circle back with some questions and themes that I think we've heard from across the dais here. The question I hear, so we're not, Acadians is something that we're sticking with. That's not the choice. That piece is there.
Right. That's a unique.
And so now it's the iReady and NWEA map. And so the real draw for the iReady piece is this connection to personalized learning, that map, right? So that's the big draw for, I would imagine, for our faculty, for our teachers, is that direct connection to the instruction, which is right the heart of what we're trying to do. And the question then is, what are we losing in terms of a broad database, whether it's comparing to the state, comparing to other communities that are similar, or even that national comparison that we have with the NWEA map. So so losing that piece, I guess, is the part that I imagine the instruction leadership team is really digging into to see how what depth or what's the frequency of iReady being used across the state and other communities, and other states, and other, is that part of looking into that?
I think that's a good summary, yeah. And I think Dan mentioned this as well. I know he mentioned this, but NWEA is resource agnostic, right? So if we were to move solely to iReady, what if we make a different decision 6 years from now, right? Are we tied forever now to iReady, right? Because we've moved solely over to that assessment. I think that's something to consider as well. But to me, it comes back to what's going to be the most impactful tool for our teachers and those PLCs to move kids forward. But yeah, that I think you summarized the debate pretty well.
Okay. And what is the value of the fall to fall or winter to winter comparison? I mean, some of that, is that at the individual level or the grade level or I feel like the more you aggregate it, the less informative it is.
From a large scale, and this is from a Dan Grumman level, from a program evaluation standpoint, I know, I like that the 12-month snapshot has some value because the testing conditions are the same each time, right? mid-year to mid-year, 12-month snapshot that includes the summer every time. So if you're thinking about really the long-term growth and students hanging on to the knowledge from one year to the next, okay, I do like that full 12-month snapshot. But again, that's, it helps in the sort of the big.
And our population of students is consistent enough that large-scale change isn't going to be due to the different students we're seeing. 'Cause
And
there's enough
even when we're looking
consistency.
at growth trajectories, NWA has a winter-to-winter growth trajectory, a fall-to-fall growth trajectory, a spring-to-spring growth trajectory. So they've got growth norms for students over those 12-month time periods. But again, fall to spring is still a good, growth path to look at. The difference is fall to spring doesn't include the summer months.
Right.
So it's just a different perspective. Ideally, what I tell, and I'll get the same question from principals, where they will ask, which time span should I pay the most attention to, right? Which one is my accountability range? And I will say all of them. And I go back to that sustainability. If I want you to look at fall to winter, winter to winter, fall to spring, and you're looking for consistency across any of those spans. Because what I don't want to see is the zigzag. You see ginormous growth fall to winter, and it kind of flattens off in the spring, and then it drops off the next. So you don't really want to see that, because then that tells you that something might be a little bit off with maybe some instructional practice or something else, or maybe there's changing test conditions that are a little bit different. So what I'm really looking for is consistent, again, the low and slow effect, right? Consistent growth no matter what time span that you're looking at.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, Ms. Embry.
Thank you, Dr. Grubin. I have one last question, which is, I think this is the first time in 5 years that I have not heard you talk about COVID in one of your assessment results, where it's been a clear, and obviously there's COVID, and we're coming right up on exactly 5 years since we did the shutdowns. There's been a lot of really impactful data being shared about what the long-term repercussions of those were for students. So I'm curious if you still see COVID in this data, and if so, how and where?
Well, I do think, as we look back at some of the historical data, 22, 23, 21, 22, those are really baseline years, right? So that's in part, I didn't mention COVID, but there's a reason why I'm intentionally pulling the last 2 to 3 years.
So if
There's
this
no
same
reason
chart
to
went
go
out
back.
further back, it would look quite a bit different.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So 22-ish is really, we kind of talked about it in those previous presentations, is really that 22 or so is really a new baseline from which we then are moving forward from. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Christie, no.
Just a brief one. Just a brief one.
That's
Wanted to know, I don't want to jump ahead or anything, because we're talking about potential to do this, that, and the other, but wanted to know what our instructors are saying about iReady. We have, for the last one calendar year, 6th through 8th, right? What are we hearing from the folks who have implemented it?
They love it.
Okay.
And so.
I've heard good things from both students, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about this from students and teachers, and it's.
Yeah, we've had just great feedback from staff, and again, just being able to go out into the classrooms and see how the instruction has changed, because there are specific instructional routines and strategies that are a part of iReady. Again, a really deep engagement with students, so a lot of taking risks and trying to attempt problems together as a team, and then explain your rationale, and then making those connections. You don't see as much direct instruction, because it's questioning, and then the students doing the talking and the problem solving, and the teacher guiding them with that. It's really neat to see. So that's really changing the instruction, and the teachers have been talking about that, and how it has changed their instruction, and how they have to give more wait time, and just really making sure. There's been a lot of follow-up with our coordinators and our math coordinators being out in the schools. Also, iReady has been fantastic to provide ongoing professional learning for us, and then actual actually go into our schools. And so they've been going into classrooms with principals and with teachers and then having those conversations around what are the challenges you have right now? What do we need to provide you additional training on, or what questions do you have? So I have to say that the ongoing professional learning and support from iReady has been really phenomenal, and I think that's had a great impact for our teachers being successful with implementing it. Yeah.
All right. I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pam and Dan. Great job.
Okay. We have a number of consent items. Could I get a motion to approve it if there is no desire to pull any items out? So that would be item 4.1 to 6.2. Thank you. Second?
Second, Borgman.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, we have 7 action items. So pour your coffee. Or your, okay. So first action item 7.1, approval of proclamation for National School Library Month.
Yeah, I do recommend the approval of this proclamation, and I think we're going to have a board member read this.
Right, so let's have Mr. Garcia read it first.
Okay.
And then we can take a motion and go from there.
All right, for School Library Month, April 2025, whereas the Shawnee Mission School Library Program is to ensure that students and staff are effective users of ideas and information, and whereas the school librarian's role is to provide the leadership and expertise necessary to ensure that the library program is an integral part of the instructional program of the school, and whereas the Board of Education has entrusted the school librarian in each school to teach the skills of locating and using information through traditional resources and new technologies, to provide literature appreciation activities, and to guide and encourage content and recreational reading to every student. And whereas lifelong learning begins and is systematically developed through the school library curriculum of the elementary and secondary schools, and whereas the school library program contributes to the individual growth and development of all students while fostering both excellence and equity in education, and whereas the school librarians of Shawnee Mission School District have dedicated themselves to work for quality library programs for all students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Shawnee Mission School District does hereby proclaim April 2025 as School Library Month in all Shawnee Mission schools, and calls upon school administrators, teachers, students, and patrons of the Shawnee Mission School District to recognize and support this action and participate throughout the month of April in celebration of School Library Month.
All right, thank you for reading that. Do I have a motion to approve? All right, second?
Second, Hembry.
Okay, any questions or discussions? Appreciate our media specialists, especially during this time of our information age. We need our leaders to help our students understand primary source documents and what they're reading, misinformation. All right, okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, item 7.2, approval of art resolution.
Yeah, thank you. I do recommend the approval of this resolution.
All right.
Yep.
And Ms. Boyd-Norona, will you read that for us?
All righty, arts are education resolution, whereas all students have the right to an arts education that includes dance, media arts, music, theater, and visual arts taught by certified arts educators in partnership with community providers. Whereas art education has the power to change students' lives. Whereas arts education is a key to reigniting students' learning in a post-COVID-19 world. Whereas arts education helps nurture healthy, inclusive communities where all points of view are respected. Whereas arts education experiences help students understand their own cultural roots and appreciate others' cultural roots and traditions. Whereas arts education supports the social and emotional well-being of students and fosters a more positive, safer school environment. Whereas arts education is a part of the well-rounded education for every student as outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act and in state law. Now therefore, be it resolved by Unified School District Number 512, Johnson County, Kansas, the Shawnee Mission School District pledges to maintain and grow our arts education programs in the 2024-25 school year and beyond. Adopted by the Board of Education of Unified School District Number 512, Johnson County, Kansas, this 24th day of March 2025.
All right, thank you for reading.
I'd like to make that motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Westbrook. Second?
Second, Garcia.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary, could I ask, sorry, while we're on this
I'm sorry.
resolution palooza, we had some folks come in February about gun safety locks for public comment. Is that something that we should anticipate having before the board?
So I did communicate back with some of those folks who asked for those for us to consider the resolution, and just reminded those folks the process that we adopted when we get a request for a resolution that comes from the community rather than a recommendation from the superintendent. And so that comes to the board president and the superintendent for review. We have had two different groups, I think, around gun safety ask for a proclamation. Was it a proclamation or resolution? Either one of the other. Anyways, in the past several years, we have issued that in June, and we've taken input from the requests, modified them a little bit in just aligning them in a cleaner way with our legislative platform, and then have adopted those in June. So I would imagine that's what we'll do again under that kind of timeline.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry. That was not the most efficient answer, but I appreciate the question. Okay. Item 7.3, approval of Microsoft subscription renewal.
Yep, so I do recommend for approval the renewal of the 3-year Microsoft 365 and Azure Active Directory Premium P1 subscriptions from the vendor Dell at an estimated annual cost of $133,353.60, or approximately $400,000 for 3 years, with final annual cost contingent upon the number of licenses needed by the district. This is a planned capital outlay expenditure under the district's technology refresh plan. This will renew our 3-year agreement with Dell. This 3-year renewal will allow for the use of Microsoft Azure and Office 365 applications for staff and students for 3 years. There is an increase in cost from last year's payment due to staff being added, which resulted in additional licenses being needed. The subscription agreement is signed directly with Microsoft. The annual subscriptions are proprietary to Microsoft, and Dell is Microsoft's designated fulfillment agent. Purchase orders will be issued to Dell.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Ousley.
Second?
Second, Hembry.
Okay, any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 7.4, authorization to renew contract with Assisted Student Transportation for alternate student transportation services in 2025-26.
For each of these next ones, I will ask Dr. Stubblefield to help me if there's any specific questions. But I do recommend renewing the current contract with Vendor Assistant Student Transportation for alternative student transportation services to run from August 1, 2025 through July 1 of 2026 at an estimated annual cost of $2,349,713.61, with final costs contingent upon student enrollment and district transportation needs. This expense would be funded with general operational funds and title funds, with some reimbursement from special education funds. And as you know, DS is our primary transportation provider, but this assisted student transportation provides some niche transportation for some of our student groups.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Ousley.
Second?
Second, Borgman.
All right, any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 7.5, authorization to contract with ROI Energy for LED lighting upgrade services. Dr. Schumacher.
Yeah, so this is something we've been planning for a while now. I recommend contracting with vendor ROI Energy to provide light emanating diode LED lighting upgrades at Shawnee Mission East, Shawnee Mission North, Shawnee Mission Northwest, Shawnee Mission South, and Shawnee Mission West High Schools at the estimated amount of $3,257,985 for implementation, with final cost contingent upon final fixture, bulb selection, completion of all lighting studies, and finalization of available utility incentives, rebates, et cetera. This expense would be paid by capital funds. It is the intent to get LED lighting across the entire district eventually. This is, of course, phase one for our high schools.
Great. Motion to approve?
So moved, Owsley.
Second, Vice President.
All right, great. Any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. 7.6, approval for 2025 flooring and ceiling surface improvements.
So I recommend for approval the Civic Elite Construction, the low qualified bidder, to provide installation of our 2025 aesthetic improvements that do include flooring and ceiling improvements. Civic Elite Construction will perform demolition of existing services and installation of new floor coverings and ceilings. The proposed costs associated with this project shall be $1,203,641.25, which includes a 5% contingency for unforeseen issues. This is a cycle as well that we plan for.
All right, great. Motion to approve these surface improvements.
So moved, Owsley.
Great.
Second, Boyd and Rona.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And our last one, approval of contractor for 2025 paving improvements.
And this is a planned cycle as well. I do recommend the following contractors. Phillips Paving Co., Inc. is recommended as the low qualified bidder for the publicly bidding portion of the 2025 asphalt improvements, and Byrne and Jones is recommended for the concrete improvements. The bids were opened on 2/27/25. McConnell and Associates are recommended utilizing a cooperative purchasing contract for the seal coat portion of the project. The total cost is $884,446.50, which includes a 5% contingency for unforeseen circumstances and/or additional work district site. This is a capital funded expense and does align with our strategic plan 6.2.4.
All right, great. Motion to approve.
So moved, Owsley.
All right, second.
Second, Boardman.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, appreciate these cycle projects coming through. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, that completes our action items. An opportunity for board comments. Anyone have anything to share? Ms. Boyd-Nerona.
I'll just share that a thanks to the school district for, a lot of times, the board is full-fledged wanting and always will support professional development for our staff and teachers and people on the other side. But we also, I want to personally thank the district for also allowing for personal development for board members. And so a couple of weeks ago, I attended the Women's Leadership Summit in Wichita. And it's not only for, it's leadership for women in education, so to speak. Is that the best way?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there were some sessions that I wanted to kind of bring out that I attended because it helped give a different lens as a woman in leadership in education at this level. One was about bringing attendance home. That's an ongoing concern that I mean, we look at all aspects from all the stakeholders that are involved. Building a culture of belonging in school communities. One of the quotes that stuck with me was, communities have systems, but not every system is a community. And I had to pause on that. I was like, wow, right? Elevating your personal brand as a female school leader helped us, in a fun way, showcase our unique qualities, strengths, and styles as just what I'm doing, we amplify our voice. I did a presentation on cybersecurity, thank you.
Excellent.
And then the closing keynote, Dr. Jill Seiler, a former superintendent and just fabulous woman, talked about leading through challenging times, and that was so fitting for the closing keynote. We left with our pom-poms and it was like, yes, we can do it. But one thing that really stuck out to me was she shared a strategy to thrive, and it was to ask yourself, how do I dance with the fear? I was like, oh, these are good. And so I just want to share those with you, and once again, thank the district for approving personal development for your board, because we need it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else have anything to share? Yes, Mr. Westbrook.
I just want to echo what Dr. Schumacher said about the Department of Education. I think it's really important for us to support that department because of how valuable its data and its funding at times and its guidance are, qualities that we very much need. I don't think closing down that department is going to make better schools, and I've said to several of you, any more than closing the National Weather Service will make better weather. We have to get data from those sources and get some evaluation of how we're doing as districts and as states from comparative databases that they produce and guidance that they offer. So thank you for making those comments, and I'm very, very enthusiastic about that kind of conversation.
I would second that. The U.S. Department of Education is incredibly valuable resource, not only for students and support for students with disabilities and students living in poverty, but providing that data-informed information to guide our practices through research, and that research at the university settings really raises the quality of our post-secondary institutions, and then the support for students just in terms of funding and making higher education accessible and creating those opportunities for students once they leave school. There's so many valuable components to the U.S. Department of Education. We really need to voice our support for the work that's done with that agency. Sorry, I jumped in. I usually try to say it to go last. Does anybody else have other comments? Yes, Ms.
I just
Asley.
have briefly, over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, there have been several small incidences that have allowed me to have a really great, deep appreciation for our district from parents of children with special education needs, indicating their deep appreciation for district leadership throughout the entire Johnson County area in supporting funding for our schools, to watching the support animals on the podcast. I feel like Dr. Schumacher needs to just have Bing Bong with him at all times for popularity points, to driving past Tomahawk and seeing how lovely the new building looks and how excited I am for that community, and knowing that that community is a combination of two feeder patterns coming together that was deliberate and thoughtful work, both from district leadership and those communities working together. There's just been little moments of light that shined where we were doing well. And I read a quote from a chemist today that said, when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. And it strikes me that the leadership in our district and in our community provides consistency that helps in dealing with the chaos from everywhere else. So I just want to appreciate everyone's work and how hard you all, the consummate professionals that you are, with your data-driven and data-informed decisions that you make for our students every day. It's very appreciated, so thank you.
All right. Okay, I think with that, we will conclude our meeting, and we'll see you all again on April 14th for our board workshop. And have a great night. Thank you, everybody.